Okay, I made a little video just now talking about the importance of June 19th to me, but then I remembered I have another video I want to make that I've been waiting to get the chance to do, and that is my review of the movie John Wick 4. Probably the most important thing to know about John Wick 4 in terms of what my opinion of it was. And by the way, there's going to be a lot of spoilers for those of you who haven't already seen the movies, so bear that in mind. Is the fact that the runtime of John Wick 4 is 2 hours and 49 minutes. And therein lies the problem. I had seen the first 3 movies. The second and the third ones I actually saw at the movie theater, though I didn't see the first one at the theater. When the fourth one came out, I thought about going to see it, and I just never did. And I don't know, the way the third one ended, I mean, obviously, we know these are cartoon movies, nothing dealing with reality at all. But the third one with that bitch from the high table running around, all their little, all their cartoon stuff about the high table and all that stuff is just not my normal kind of thing that I'm really into anyways. It's just like superhero movies, I'm just usually into more realistic, stuff that has some kind of relevance to actual reality. And John Wick is like a cartoon. It's no different than Superman or Batman movies or something. The only ones of those that I actually like are ones that tend to be more grounded in kind of like more gritty, realistic kind of things. Never really been into all the Marvel movies and all that stuff that much. But I went whenever Ballerina came out. We got this thing through that T-Mobile Tuesdays, like $5 movie ticket. And my wife is not into all those movies. People just nonstop brutal violence and all that kind of stuff and killing everybody. But she went with me, we went to see it. And I thought it was a really good movie. Better than I was expecting. Once again, some spoilers here. Supposedly that movie, Ballerina, was set in between John Wick 3 and John Wick 4. Which, for those of you who've seen John Wick 3, you know that by the time that ended, he was totally out in the cold. And actually pretty much, left for dead, or at the very least, when they couldn't find his body, they sure as hell weren't going to be sending him to do anything for the organization, They were looking out for try and find him and kill him. And he was looking to kill as many of them as he could, as you can see from the way John Wick 4 starts. But, like I say, this is a cartoon, The fact that they set that movie in between John Wick 3 and John Wick 4, I guess they had to find somewhere to put it and claim that it was in that timeline just so they could have him show up and do something in it. But, obviously, there's no way that he would have been actually doing anything in that time period. Hi, how's it going? For the organization, But after I saw Ballerina, I thought, well, I probably should finally watch John Wick 4. And I started watching it one night on Peacock or wherever it was, I don't know. And I managed to get through close to a couple hours of it. And I thought, okay, I've got to go to bed. My wife had long since gone to bed, and I thought, okay, well, it's time for me to go to bed so I can get up in the morning and go to work. And the next day, I ended up, it was before my day off, so I didn't have to go to work the next day. But I still got kind of bored and tired of it and had to turn it off because it was so long. And the next day, after I dropped my wife off at work, I actually finished watching the movie. For those of you who've seen it, you know how he had to go and make his way up the steps in Paris to have a duel at sunrise. And he had to get his ass in gear because sunrise was at 6:03 or something like that. And he only had like 5 to 10 minutes to get his butt up to the top of the steps and get going. As soon as he starts up the steps, all these assassins start coming after him. And has these huge, hand-to-hand / gunfight action scene. And finally you think, okay, he got that done. He's finished with all those guys. And now we're going to get to the main event. And unfortunately, you're wrong, because as soon as he's almost to the top of the steps, here comes this other guy that he kicked off the second, third floor of some place earlier in the movie, who is miraculously still alive, because in the John Wick movies, when people fall 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories, they don't die. And it's just like in the first movie where John Wick gets thrown off the balcony in that club, lands on his spine on the floor down below, and then suddenly at that point we find out he has a backup piece in the small of his back, which he should have remembered when he was having the battle upstairs, but I guess they wanted to have a little hand-to-hand action there and not have him remember that. So instead they have him falling a couple of stories onto his spine with a pistol in the small of a back holster, which would have broken his spine anyways, even if the fall didn't, just on hitting the floor, Like I say, it's a cartoon. But people in those movies, after you kick them off of buildings, they show back up again, And here he is, about to reach the top of the stairs. Morning. And they couple of Filipinos who are always out here walking around, this older couple. Here comes that guy again with his cronies, and they have another big giant battle. And then here goes John Wick getting kicked, bouncing all the way down the steps non-stop, down these couple hundred of steps. And as soon as that happened, I was already reaching for the remote to fast forward through it, because I was like, holy shit, you gotta be kidding me, And he gets down to the bottom. The other guy comes sliding down along the side of the steps like a sliding board, and comes down there, and they start fighting again. And by that point I had the remote in my hand and just started fast forwarding until they got to the big duel at the top. But it was actually, I had heard before, that John Wick died at the end of the movie, which of course, it's not. They show him with a headstone there in the cemetery next to his wife. That doesn't mean he actually died, Just means they disappeared him and pretending he's dead, whatever, because he was alive and well at the end of the movie, though badly injured. But that's the biggest problem with that movie. It's just that 49 minutes that they went over 2 hours, they could have easily gotten rid of, because it was just so much over-the-top, unnecessary stuff that just kept going and going and going and going. I know that's the cool thing about the movies, is those big action scenes and all of that, and the gunfights, and that's the only reason that most of us who are into firearms and stuff watch them, is to see the coolest Terran tactical pit vipers and sand vipers and whatever else he's got in there, and the cool Terran tactical shotguns and stuff. But it's a kung fu movie, with guns. It's just over the top, crazy, unbelievable action scenes. But that's the fun of it, I guess. The problem for me was just, it was like, an hour too much fun. You could have gone through there and edited out a huge amount of that stuff and made the story flow a whole lot faster. But I guess they thought this might be our last hurrah, so let's cram in everything we can. It was just too long, Good movie. I liked the story. But, as a person who's done some screenwriting myself and has learned about that stuff and had script readers and producers and people giving me feedback on stuff and editing stuff and giving me notes about, you know, things and suggestions for how to improve stuff. That's one of the main things, is to get rid of the boring stuff that just goes on too long. So that, for me, I love the movie. I'll probably watch it again if I have time to sit down and watch the whole thing through. But man, just way too long. Great movie, but you know, why they thought they needed to make it 2 hours and 49 minutes long, I have no clue. And once again, of course, if you watch the third and the fourth movies and then you try to picture the events of Ballerina in between those, and you know, obviously I think they could have just done without trying to pretend that it fit into the John Wick universe at some specific point and just said, yeah, here. And they could have had it happen earlier in his life, but I guess they wanted to work in some of the footage from the one scene in the third movie where he came through the training place and all of that, you know, and all the other people saw him coming through. That's the only thing I can think. Anyways, now my review is going on too long, and I'm guilty of the same thing John Wick 4 is.